All right, so we are here. Jamie and Jim Sheils.
Yes.
So
Hello.
what's it say on the book? Whose name's first?
Jim's name's first.
Jim.
I didn't edit it.
You know.
We know we'd be in trouble if I edited the book. Can you imagine that?
But it should be ladies first, man. Jamie's name should be there.
I'm just glad he let me get on the
Best looking goes second, they say.
Oh, is that somehow you tried to recover from that? Yeah.
I'm trying.
So what's new? You guys are up here. We were just talking about real estate, Florida. Yeah, what is new? Okay. Hold on. Now I'm all over the place. Florida hurricane just went through by the time we're recording this, but it didn't hit Florida too bad this time, right?
No, what it actually...
Not our area.
No. I think a part of the... what's called the Gulf Coast got hit. That's the panhandle that goes out that way. And a little bit of the upper West Coast. We don't build in any of those areas. So we were very silent, which we're fine with. Where the hit really happened was upper Georgia and the Carolinas, which this is being called the 100-year flood.
Yeah, because that's what I've been seeing some stuff online, and it's weird. It's weird. You kind of have to dig for trying to figure out what's really going on. It doesn't seem to be reported the way it usually is. Is that right or no?
It's been oddly underreported. So there's been a lot of like back channels with real estate friends who are invested up there that Jamie and I have been watching, and it's pretty tragic. I mean, they're saying this is the 100-year flood, and I think the last time it happened was like 107 years ago. But they say this happened
in that same area, or like generally
in that same area it happened, and none of these people have
flood insurance, which is where I was going to go. They're not prepared. So,
oh, geez.
We live on the beach. We're prepared. We know these things happen where we live on our island. But central Georgia and central
Tennessee.
Yeah, they're not
Western
built for this stuff.
Wow.
I mean, they're beautiful lake countries and river countries, but they're not known for flooding. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. But it is quite strange, and not being conspiracy, but there's just a lot of underreporting. And what's sad is there's more deaths than what they're telling you. I mean, there are a lot of people missing.
Yeah.
And that's a long time now to be missing.
Mudslides and...
Yeah, I've heard some... you got to question everything you read, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I've heard some of the stories that I've heard that have been posted by people saying they're speaking to people there, and what they're hearing is tragic.
Gruesome.
Yeah, exactly. That's a better word. Yeah,
I have a friend that has a farm there, and I watched what appeared to be her barn in the middle of a river. I mean, it went from being a barn that is sizable to it was just the top of the barn in the middle of a rushing river, and I don't even know how close they were to water, honestly. But their whole road washed out, and
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's hard to transition to anything after that because that's obviously a serious thing, but it always brings a question to me that I always get, and I'm going to ask you again because I have to, just to clarify, because this did go through Florida, and I've always hear these stories about insurance in Florida.
Oh, sure.
But my understanding still from you is that with new construction in Florida built to a certain standard for hurricane insurance, maybe floods are different, I don't know, there's no problem getting insurance.
Yes. So, and I'll be talking to the whole Rockstar gang in a couple of days, and I'm going to talk about the quote unquote, I heard investing. I heard, it's always that I heard you can't get insurance in Florida. I heard there's no international financing. I heard, and really that is the myth of I heard. And there's a huge difference between a 1952 property and a new construction. And that's what I'd say to any family, friends, whether they're buying a new construction with us or just finding something. I say, try to find something in 2004 or newer.
Okay, I was going to ask the year. So that's when those laws changed for the standards?
In 2004, Hurricane Charlie came through Punta Gorda, where we build now, and it decimated it. I mean, my dad's cousin lived there, and I mean, they just got reamed. And the government stepped in. They said, okay, time out. No. I mean, you used to be able to build at 2 or 3 feet above sea level. Now it's demand of 13 to 14 feet above sea level.
So if a surge comes in, if it's
You're
less
above.
than a 13 feet, 12 or 13 foot surge, then you're not actually, it's not the water, in theory, shouldn't be reaching the house, right?
it shouldn't breach the house. Yeah, and there's also different tie-ins and windows and all other standards that were increased at that time.
Yeah, they changed it. And so that made a huge difference. And in fact, I think one of the last times I was up here, I showed you guys that video where, so Punta Gorda really set.
You did, yeah.
And then, 3 years ago, we had Hurricane Ian, and it went through, and, we had hundreds of building projects down there. So it was a pretty big concern of us say, okay, we're going to test this new construction model, because that was the first major hurricane since, you remember my old model of fixing up old houses, right? We went to new.
I was talking to Pierre Paul today about that.
Were you really?
Yeah, and I'm just like, because I said, I'm like, yeah, Jim was one of the, because he was asking about Brian as well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, those were the only guys at that time that I actually were doing it. Like everyone talked about flipping all these properties. And I'm like, yeah, right. No one's really doing it. And then I flew down to see Jim. I'm like, he was actually doing it. I couldn't believe it. I was still to this day, I remember some of the properties we visited.
Yeah, no. And it was a great model. It's a great way to get started, but you're always trying to evolve, right? The stuff we were doing when we first met almost 20 years ago, you evolve into different things. And the old fixer-upper served a purpose, but the new construction I like way better. Mm-hmm. And it's one of these reasons because of the insurance. Now, going with that last hurricane a few years ago, we had almost no damage. In fact, we had 278 builds going on. We had 4 that needed insurance claims. And those 4 properties, the walls fell over. We hadn't had time to tie the roof on.
Got it.
Which gives that.
Yeah, they weren't supported yet. Yeah.
So but we had no flooding at all. And contrary to issue, and we just saw this in Georgia and Tennessee and your friend's farm, Jamie. I don't ever call you Jamie. So I'm sweetheart. I guess I'm being very formal, but I didn't want people to think I was calling.
We have to be proper.
Well, I didn't want them to think I was calling.
For making you.
I didn't calling Nick sweetheart.
Yeah, they thought I might be calling Nick sweetheart. He is a really nice guy.
Later, after a glass of wine, you might call Nick
sweetheart.
Yeah,
right. This is going to get interesting.
No, but contrary to popular thoughts, I heard the damage from hurricanes comes from wind. It doesn't. It comes from flooding. Mm-hmm. And so that is the major issue with hurricanes. It's flooding.
So it brings in the water when it comes in.
And that's what causes the damage. Mm-hmm. It's wind. Yeah, wind's an issue. Don't get me wrong, but it's flooding that causes the most amount. So a couple of things you can do if you're buying in Florida. Again, first of all, if you heard you cannot get insurance in Florida, that's not true. Now, if you buy a house 1952 that was built at 2 feet above sea level, you're going to pay probably 5x insurance than like a new construction, because insurance is all about risk, right? So
if you had to compare, just for context, because you can get insurance, and you were talking about pricing, but if you had to compare insurance in Florida at something after 2004 compared to a comparable property in, pick another state doesn't have these concerns, is it how much extra are you paying in Florida? Like, I know you can't know insurance rates all over the country.
I don't know. I would know the difference. I know the difference between a home built prior to that date and one built after. So
and what's that?
Well, you could do on our street. Like, talk about our little, Nick's been to our house right on 17th Street. There's our house.
I just don't know how much other people pay in their insurance. But for us, we have a property that's a 1928 property, a 1948 property, and our insurance premium versus our home that's actually on the ocean.
Good one, yeah.
So I don't even pay an entire year for my, larger home on the ocean. That rate is at least half, maybe a third of what I pay in this house that's inland, but it's because it's so much older and it doesn't have those better standards of building.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
What's going on how's Florida market in general? Because I know after COVID, you guys were very popular. You had this thing in that state called freedom. It was weird, right? So you guys...
We rather enjoyed that. I got to be honest with you.
Well, again, Pierre Paul's here today talking about Alberta. He's like, we have this thing where we still have, we're creating more freedom and joy. I forget what he said, but where we have like, I forget what they're doing. Yeah. So they're a little bit more that way than other parts of Canada. So I was being jealous there. Now I'm jealous with you guys. And so you had this influx of people, and it drove prices, like especially real estate prices, drove a lot of things, a lot of challenges come with that too. Where are things now? Is that kind of slowed down a little bit, or no?
The 1,200 people a day are still moving to Florida, and so. Here's another I heard. This is the big theme. I heard Florida has stopped growing and is going down. That's a very big, wide, misconceived I heard.
Have people heard that? Because I haven't heard that. I was just
I've heard. And where we've seen some softening for sure are the 3 areas everyone thinks that Florida's built off of.
So
Miami, Orlando, and Tampa. Those are the three biggies, right? I mean, as a Jersey boy, I thought, oh, that's all there is to Florida.
I've never been to Tampa.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. It's nice. I wouldn't want to live there. Again, you're on a bay instead of the ocean. Why would you want to live on a bay when you can live on an ocean?
Just offended someone in Tampa, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, and I have family in Tampa, so I'm allowed. Sorry, guys. But those, again, I'm really big on median price. What is the median value versus the average household income? And those areas, it got out of whack. And so we've seen a little softening there. And there was more spec there because that's what was known where to go. And but for our markets, here's what we've seen. The market has remained steady. The affordable stuff priced just below the median still has a lot of activity for first-time home buyers, even with the rates being at a 26-year high. In the beginning of this year, about Q2, and I know you and I were talking about this, we saw what came on the market, a lot of quote-unquote COVID inventory, right? What is COVID inventory? Well, we all know about the supply chains, right? There are all these people waiting to get things done. Multi-unit builders, we all finally got our supplies, and boom, they get them finished. So a big amount of properties came on the market.
And those are single-family properties you're talking about?
Single-family mainly, and some smaller multis.
Okay.
And, so that took a lot of the average of, 35 days to like 65 days for filling a tenancy. And people started to freak out. So here's the interesting thing. We're already seeing that inventory being worked through. And we were just talking about this where I know you're going to go over some stuff on Saturday about the condo market. So we peaked in this COVID inventory is being already worked through. And we peaked on permits about a year and a half ago. And right after that, because the interest rates jumped, it just plummeted. For multis, they stopped because the commercial financing rates were too high. And so we're seeing now that nothing has been started, yet that 1,200 people a day are still moving there. And that's a generously low number. So what we're seeing is that working through, and they're estimating by the end of this year and into next, we're going to have, again, another inventory shortage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because our product is different. Where the spike we had in Toronto specifically, the spike we had in inventory, or the inventory got started, was high-rise condominiums. Mm-hmm. And because of the timelines to be able to finish those, we're seeing those come on the market today, or this year, next year, and the year after are the 3 big years that we're seeing that. So that's when we're going to see that same type of inventory kind of worked through because they were selling at that time, but now the projects are being completed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In that specific market. In the single family segment's different. We haven't been building as many just because of the density in Toronto, and then even around the surrounding area, just the numbers of those that were being built were smaller because we were going to higher density, whether it's towns, not so much semis. We don't build a ton of semis. We do have semis, but it's more, it would go to towns or even stacked townhomes, things like that.
Okay.
So we're starting, so it's our market's weird right now because it's very pocket by pocket, and the type of property really matters a lot right now. So we're starting to kind of see that. What about the rental market there? Did it slow? Because I think I read some stats. I didn't hear. I think I read some stats that it had.
My brother-in-law that.
Well, but it's on foot. Like, the reason I'm asking is because typically anything that goes up at the rate that goes up, it's an unsustainable rate, right? Mm-hmm. So usually there is some period of correction, which short term, long term, it doesn't really matter. Short term, it's just a little blip on the radar. So, and I know the rental market was on fire there as well. Yes. So is demand kind of come off that a little bit?
So here's what I can tell you. Yes and no. So what's interesting is during COVID, almost all of our markets average days on market 8 or 9 days. I mean, it was just insane.
Yeah,
and there was 2 to 3 weeks of inventory. A normal MLS, the multiple listing service, has about 4 months worth of inventory. Yeah. We were down to 3 weeks of inventory, 7 or 8 days on the market, right? An average market is about 30, 35 days. Since we're in 12 different markets building, when you're doing build to rent, building properties specifically to rent them, there's always going to be some ebbs and flows. So, for example, Palm Coast, which you've been with me a number of times, yep. Right? This time last year, a bunch of inventory came on. We pulled back on our starts. We sent out to all our investors, said, hey, we're seeing a bunch coming on the market right now. we had about 87 units, a mixture between duplexes and single family homes going on the market. And we said, we're gonna pull back on our starts a little bit and do some marketing initiatives and just see where it goes. This is the end of September. By January 15th, we had 5 units on the market.
Oh, wow.
So it went from this slow thing, and now, but that market went from about a 30-day to a 72-day fill. And now Palm Coast is back down to just under 30 days. Huh. So when we're in 12 different markets, that's always going to fluctuate. What I see, Nick, is a fluctuation between about 25 days to an average of about 75 days. And then each one has these little changes, and it'll go up and down. But to say Florida as a whole again, one of the biggest ones too is, and again, this is a different segment, and Jamie and I own them. Jamie manages the ones that we have. It's not our main focus.
But vacation rentals?
Vacation rentals.
Yeah, so I was actually going to say, so that
those have
gone down drastically, because what happened was the market just got too saturated. Everybody was like, oh, I could turn any home into a vacation rental. And really not just any home is a vacation rental. And so
that is in what are you guys in multiple areas there? Or are you primarily around St. Augustine?
St. Augustine, Ponte Vedra area.
Yeah, okay.
So that's the main spot we're in.
So we've turned a number of our short-term rentals into long-term rentals.
It's nice when you have properties that you can have options like that with. Like that's to me the best.
Yeah, and that rental market is steady. So we had no problem getting long-term tenants. We actually had multiple people requesting 2- and 3-year leases because the rental market is so hot where we are right now for long-term rentals because of, as Jim said, the amount of people coming in looking for housing is not equivalent to what's provided.
And those are well placed near downtown St. Augustine or out at the beach. And so that's good. But again, that's the important thing. And I encourage people, wherever you're going, short-term rentals can be great. Yes, you're getting a daily rate instead of a monthly, but there's other things to it. The management's more expensive, the furnishing's more expensive, and then I heard I can rent it for 25 days a month. Well, what if you're only getting 8? And we've been seeing some lower averages. So if you have a high basis, see, Jamie and I were lucky on these properties.
There's more babysitting involved. I mean,
more babysitting.
These are my children. We're touching base often on what's going on. I currently have a plumbing claim on one, and I got a rehab on another. Yeah. It's just like anything else, but they are not, but
could you imagine?
They're not quite the same as a new build that you put long-term rental.
Well, and when you're local, it's easier to handle a lot of that type of stuff as well, because the people, the area, the ones that need more like the vacation rentals need more management, right?
Need more, and we have a vacation rental manager that Jamie manages, but it's just a different market. And the thing. Remember, I've learned my lessons over some of them.
It's more of a job. It is much more of a job.
Well, what I'm getting at is basis is so important. So, when I first started out, I started buying really cheap houses, Nick, at the bottom of the market. And those did not hold their value well in 2008. Holy cow, that was a painful time. And then go to the other side, like vacation rentals, the higher end markets drop, and lose occupancy in flat times. It's that priced right around the median that just seems to hold its value in the bad times and grow in the good times. And so when you go into vacation rentals, you're buying something usually higher end. So you better have a low basis. I mean, Jamie and I have owned these properties for quite a while, and so our basis is really low. But some people are just getting in, and they're getting into this high basis, and they're doing their numbers based off of 25 days a month, every month. That can be a scary situation. Then all of a sudden they go, man, I'm getting 10 days a month. I got to turn it into a long term. And they do their numbers. They're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, it doesn't work the same way.
It's going to bleed me quite heavily. So, look, we like them, and maybe for usage, you know what I mean? We've met a lot of, Canadians coming down and saying, we're going to split time. That makes sense because it's more emotional. It's more for personal use.
Lifestyle.
Very long term.
Yeah, well, then there's a cost to you being able to use it, so you can justify that versus a pure investment. When if it's losing money on a monthly basis, it's harder to make that make sense, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And we have a home in Costa Rica that doesn't make we short term rent it when we're not there. However, it wouldn't make sense financially if it was just a short-term rental for us. It only makes sense because it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
you have a similar situation in Croatia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, financial sense, zero. But lifestyle and time with the family, high. Yes, I'll pay that. There's nothing more valuable, that I've learned over the years now, right?
Exactly.
I know you guys get that.
Yeah, totally.
You know what's really cool, though, that is a little bit different, and I didn't realize you did that, is that you guys were able to turn down, because the supply is similar, you guys are like, oh, we're just going to turn down the new supply and focus on the existing supply, because you operate the supply arm and kind of the management arm.
Yes.
So you can kind of offset that a
We're
little bit.
watching it all the time.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Right. It's very important too.
Yeah, but I don't know like that a lot of people, I'm sure there are other people that would do that, but not everyone would, because some people are just like, well, I don't care. Let's just keep building more properties. If we can sell more, let's build more.
And again, the business model, we didn't know what we were doing 10 years ago when we got into this. We're going to build new properties instead of rehab old ones. And you saw the old model. But the fact that normally a builder builds properties and a property manager manages properties, they don't really talk. A new construction builder is not talking, consistently daily to a property manager. They're in two different worlds. Our worlds are very ingrained, and so there is conversation every day. So we're really watching the market, and we didn't realize how important that was going to be, but it's super important. Again, if we're in a dozen markets, we don't want to be known as overbuilders or, hey, why don't you have more for us when there's a need there? So you're constantly monitoring.
Yeah, that's cool. What about have you seen, because something I felt when I was there, and I don't know if this was accurate or not, but something we saw here in Toronto is as affordability gets eroded in the city, then people that can no longer afford there, they slowly move out to the suburbs. This was happening before COVID, even before the work from home thing. So a bunch of money gets dumped into Toronto, pushes prices up. A lot of other people are like, well, I can't afford that, so I'll go out to these surrounding areas outside of Toronto. And I got the sense, it felt like that's where Jacksonville kind of sat. That because of the median price was a bit lower when we were in the Jacksonville area. I know you guys are in many areas, but I'm just talking about that area.
Yeah, but that's a core area for us.
So when you compare that to Miami, of course, because Miami's Miami, it's in another stratosphere. But when you even compare it to Orlando, I don't know anything about Tampa. I was like, oh, this feels like it's 2 hours away from Orlando. There's a bunch of jobs and stuff there. But the affordability here is better. So naturally, you're going to have some people moving up to that area because they can afford a home that they might not be able to afford elsewhere.
Yes.
And you get growth there that, from this kind of like spillover of those areas.
Yeah.
And we've had spillover from like our St. Augustine area, which is a fringe area from Jacksonville, such as Palm Coast. Palm Coast is a little bit of a stretch outside of that metropolis, larger city area. And it's a high growth area because of that exact reason that you're talking about. It's right outside of that heavy economic to where it becomes more affordable.
So it
makes more sense.
So like some people that are, of course some, but I mean, you're noticing maybe a growing trend of people that are working in the Jacksonville area or would be now living in Palm Coast.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Palm Coast has always been a bedroom community, and you've been there a few times. So I mean, we got engaged there. We love Palm Coast. It's an affordable coastal market that really does feel higher end, but it doesn't have the price points of driving 4 hours south to, who's our mutual, Frank McKinney's area or something that. I mean, you're paying 3 times.
Or being in Jacksonville Beach or Ponte Vedra Beach is so much more expensive.
Is it more?
Palm
Yeah.
Coast.
Okay.
Oh,
Hugely.
yeah, much more.
And we even have a long-term tenant that recently moved out. She purchased her own home, and she can't live in the town in which she could rent in. She could, the university professor. So she had contracts fall through on multiple homes because of one thing or another, and it's a competitive market, and she ended up buying a new construction right outside, and so now she commutes in 40-ish minutes because the surrounding areas are really where it's at for affordability.
The fringe areas for sure. And Jacksonville, again, I always go back to this, that Miami is more than double the median price for a home. Tampa, Orlando, the same way as Jacksonville. Jacksonville is just as big, has a way more diverse economy than those 3 markets, really, when you look at the different job sources. But they're just over 300,000 for the median. You're 2x that in any of those other markets for the median. And it's not...
Those numbers sound, like compared to our real estate prices, they just sound comical.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the median would be, what, a 3-bedroom bungalow?
A 3-bedroom, 2 bath.
Yeah,
3-2.
right? Yeah.
3-2, 1,400 square feet.
Yeah.
I'd say be about the average marker. And so that's where we're always trying to uncover our building areas for that, because our ranges go from, middle Florida, the Ocala area, which goes from the 260s, really to Southwest Florida that only goes to about the 370s. So we're staying really affordable. And we want to be there. And also, you got to remember, it's not just people moving around Florida. We're having a huge influx from the areas where people are pulling up the white flag of cost. Lots of people from California, lots of people from Utah,
New Jersey,
lots of Jersey and New York people.
I was talking to someone that's looking in Florida from here. I think they're going to move there. I don't know. I forget if they're going to move there or not, but they didn't want to go to South Florida because of the weather. They actually were looking in Jacksonville is one of the places they were looking because it's further north. So they're like, it's just a more temperate climate. You kind of get seasons. You just don't get those extremes that you might get in further south, right? So there's that aspect of it too, because not everyone just wants hot heat and the humidity that comes in. Like in the summer, in some places in Florida, it's tough. Like you just walk out and you're
Well, you've been down there before in the winter, and you're like, gosh, I thought it was going to be warmer. Like we're more like the Carolinas, like nothing compared to the Toronto winters or Jersey winters that I grew up in. But we're 6.5 hours north of Miami, so there's a big difference there. But also for people, if they're like, I'm terrified of hurricanes, I say, don't go to the lower southeastern part of Florida. That is the highest risk zone of hurricanes, and it goes down from different areas from there.
When's the last time Jacksonville or St. Augustine area got hit by a decent sized hurricane recently?
So what's interesting is
Jamie grew up there.
Born and raised there. And we only evacuated once in 35 years. And when I say evacuated, I mean my family drove over the bridge to another family member's house. We didn't really...
So you're just not right on the coast.
We just weren't right on the... But we ended up having two back-to-back in 16 and 17.
Yeah.
So it was 11 months apart.
But the only place that got damage, was the barrier island.
It was our barrier island.
So his property's on our barrier island. So our rentals in Jacksonville... and in St. Augustine,
even
fine.
our short-term rentals in the same town, but just not right there.
And it was damaged with water. So water came up and it managed to hit those homes there. Is that right?
That was actually a tornado.
Oh, okay.
So it
was the wind.
It was back to back. Our neighbors, the tide rised quite a bit. All the homes that are on one side of our island were lower lying. They got flooding. Us personally.
That's the west side.
We had the rare thing of what's called what do they call it?
It's a water spout.
A water
it's
spout.
A tornado that
came
comes
right off the water. And so this wasn't normal hurricane winds.
Come on.
It hit our things. We had a roof.
A triplex roof lifted over the power, never broke the power lines.
Hit part of our house and our fence.
Fell on top of everything.
So this
crazy.
Look, and people are like, oh my God, this is terrible.
But that's like why.
That is the risk of living on a barrier. You've been to the house.
40 years. Once in 40 years.
It's 10 houses wide. We love being able to walk to the intercoastal or 4 seconds to the ocean, but we stay well insured. And that's the life that we choose. You know what I mean? But for investment,
it's a life a lot of people choose, to be fair, right?
Yeah, I mean, the most valuable property in the world, where is it? It's normally waterfront somewhere.
But that's not what we're trying to sell other people.
No, not as investment stuff. Yeah, we're just talking.
Always, and again, getting back to the insurance thing, always remember, new construction, the insurance feels you're a lower risk. And also, once you buy a property 5 miles inland or more, just because of the odds of damage. Again, Jamie grew up in this and never had it again.
Oh, it drops more at 5 miles in?
If you go at least 5 miles inland, where we build most of our properties, or the ones I used to rehab, then insurance goes down, and the chance of you, even if a hurricane comes through, it's much, much lower.
Like insanely lower.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier, our oldest son, Alden, just closed on his first home. And his homeowner's insurance...
It's nothing.
So
it's under $200 a month.
Oh wow! Yeah.
I think it was like $1,600 for the year.
And what kind of property? Same type of property.
2008.
A 3-2.
Okay.
Three bedroom, 2 bath, 1,450 square feet. A perfect starter home for a 21-year-old.
So this is he's living in this home, or it's an investment for him.
He's living in it, and he's going to have a roommate pay for part of the mortgage. But he had a goal that he wanted to do it, and he qualified on his own, which is what we wanted. And it's his house.
And he did do a lot of research as far as it's a great neighborhood. It's a great rental market neighborhood as well. So he knows numbers ahead of time that when he moves out of there into his next home, this isn't probably his forever home. This is his intention is he'll have another home. This will become a rental. And he already knows that the market there currently will more than cover what his mortgage is. So he's already looked into that.
Why do you guys think, like, at 21, some people want to move out, some people don't? Why do you think he was eager to right now? Was it because he sees what you guys have done with real estate, so he kind of wanted, his foot in the game a little bit?
I mean, I think so. We programmed it from a young age where it's, and I basically would say,
I don't know if that sounds great, like program, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
What we said is, my program was, don't do what we do. Don't do it. Don't become a real estate investor unless you want to be.
Yeah.
At least to the volume I was, like, you're like, holy cow, you're doing a crazy amount. I'm like, don't do that. I think you should be involved. It's a great way to build wealth, but don't do it just because I do it. And I think curiosity killed the cat and started to make sense. And then
his interest is fishing, and so he became a charter fishing captain. He has his own boat. He has his own business.
Which is so cool because he did that young.
Yeah,
you can only get your license.
You can test at 18, and he did it at 18. And he had a goal that by the time he turned 21, he wanted to own his first property. And his intention was to figure out how he could do it, live in it, rent a room or whatever that looked like. But he had a vision, and the home had to fit certain things. It had to be able to house his boat. So not just any property where we live has enough room, or a second driveway, or a homeowners association, or all of these layers. And so he had to make certain that the property fit his parameters.
And the banks, I'd imagine, a young guy that's a chartered fisherman, I don't know, around here that would sound like, the banks want a standard T4. A T4 slip is like a regular income on salary. Mm-hmm. If you're an entrepreneur, you're working for yourself, or your income's not guaranteed by a company that's coming towards you, right away they just don't like you. So,
well, there's a couple of things, and we can talk about this. I do want to back up because I think this is really important for people. At about 15-ish, we have, the money talk. We all know about, you got to have the sex talk with your teens. Well, we have the money talk. And that really is what sparked them. And at 15, 16 for Alden and Leland, the others are too young, they start to, I share all of our finances with them. This is what we have. This is what we do. This is how I made money. This is how I lost money. This is what Mom and I are looking to do.
They sit in our Thursday accounting meetings every Thursday. They sit there and they ask questions.
And that's your accounting meetings as a household, or as the business side of things as well?
Our personal finance, not like the big building company.
Yeah, okay.
More of our personal.
So like your rentals and
our rentals, our personal money, what comes in, what's going out, what we're facing.
Yeah, when things are good, things are slim, what's going on with this, what's going on with that. And he started to see, and then he approached us and said, I want to be a millionaire by 27, 28. And I said, okay, well, let's look at this, and that's when we started to explain, well, here's what I did, here's how I became it at that age. And we started to take steps. Okay, let's build a charter fishing business. You can do that, and then you can use the money from that to qualify and buy 2 rentals a year starting at this age. And so he's doing it now. We started doing that plan, but we started to share, what did we do? How do we do? I know a lot of people are like, I'm not going to talk to my kids about our money. I'm like, I think that's insane. How do you expect kids to be able to handle money, understand, if you don't have the trust to share, about it?
Especially the lows, because one thing that I think would be easy is for our children to say, oh, Mom and Dad set their own schedules. Oh, Mom and Dad, we get to go on these great trips, and we provide meals for all of our family, and we take in extra children. The layers of things, it would be easy for our children to think, oh, it must just be easy to have money, but to sit around in a table and hear really hard decisions that we have to make, I think has been guided them into knowing to prepare for these things, or to set reasonable goals and how to navigate.
Well, just to be able to think about, to speak about it, because in our household, like, it's weird that Tom and I are in the world that we're in and do what we do, and will openly speak about this stuff, because we grew up in a household where we didn't speak about money.
Ditto.
Like, my dad came home, he gave my mom the paycheck, she would deposit it, give him the money that he would take every week, right? And then we'd have money, so I would see that happening. But there was really no conversation. Like, still to this day, we can't speak with my dad about money. He just gets stressed out. He's like, oh, I can't talk about this. He doesn't want to.
Yep.
And my mom is able to have the conversations, but just not, it was never about investing. Everything was cash. I didn't want to use credit cards. It was just cash to pay, and that's it, So we never got exposed to that. Yeah. And I think, I agree. I think there's value to that for sure. It's not that you're sharing anything that might be even groundbreaking, but it's just the fact that you're able to speak about a topic that isn't readily spoken about. So now I feel like they understand, like, you got to speak about it and communicate and think about it. And I don't know. I just feel like there's something there.
Absolutely. And I
Big
think
time.
too, a lot of young people even find themselves in bad financial situations because they weren't guided properly. It wasn't talked about, or they see their parents and they think, how could I go to my dad and tell him I'm in debt? Look how great he's done. And layers to that where they feel trapped, just even in Ireland recently, some young adults got into some trouble and ended up dying by suicide because they were afraid to go to their parents and
very
say,
sad stories.
Instead
really
of going to their
sad
parents and
stories in
saying,
Ireland.
hey, and it's just because there's so many things that aren't talked about, but being able to say, I struggle, here's an example, and just work and showing how you work through those things, how we make wiser decisions.
Yeah. There's something I wanted to ask you about, and it's something. So with Alden, we waited, and let me preface that what I'm talking about.
You're going to program me with something?
Yeah. Well,
Wait for the download.
Yeah.
So here it is. So many people, and again, this is some of my closest friends and mentors, said my 9-year-old bought a duplex. And I mean this lovingly. I don't want to say, I'm like, bullshit. No, they didn't. They talked to the realtor. They negotiated the contract. They worked with the mortgage person. So we have properties that obviously, hopefully long from now, I'd like to pass along to the next generation. But we're not saying it's their property. And we wanted them to build curiosity, interest, commitment. And so by the time now that Alden did this, like he was interested. He said, hey, this is what I want for my life. How did you do it with real estate? Could you explain it? Can you and Mom sit with me? And so his curiosity grew. And then this last deal, like we went around the neighborhoods, we showed him what we did. He had seen things, but he started to take the initiative.
He learned how to search things like how much are my taxes values in this area?
What are the comps?
Rental?
That's cool.
So he did it all. And so my whole point with this, Nick, and I want to know where you stand on this. God forbid I got hit by a truck tomorrow, he would know how to negotiate a deal.
He did. He
did his own thing.
Yeah.
But if I gave him a property at 9, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but our thought process is like, he won't truly appreciate it. He doesn't have to really grow his wings or
he's
the
not
skill
going to know
set.
how to do it again.
He doesn't go through the mechanics, and we were gone. He's like, well, doesn't it just kind of come to me and, I get my picture taken in front of it? So I talked to real estate friends with all this because we struggled with it. Should we give them a property and have them run it, or just have them be around our properties? And then when they're ready at this young age, they're ready to do it on their own with a little bit of guidance and guardrails from us, but they actually do it.
Yeah, I would agree with your approach. I think I spoke to an accountant, one of the accountants we work with, and he does a lot of financial planning for people and deals with high net worth individuals, really. And he's like, guys, the biggest thing I see the mistake is with these properties is have the conversation with your kids to see if they even want to deal with these properties. Yeah. He goes, it's the biggest thing I see, that sometimes someone will pass away and the kids are like, I don't give a shit about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with this crap. I saw what they had to deal with. I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's the biggest thing. So yeah, I agree with that. Because if you don't want it, I wholly agree with that too. You're not going to care.
Yeah.
One of the recent properties that we bought, so this was like my wife and I, we bought it close to home purposely because I wanted the kids to be involved. But at that time when this started, I guess they were 9 and 13. They didn't give a damn. The first time we went there, I think we had to, I forget, I think it was just closing. We had to pick up the documents. I don't even know what we did, but we were going to be there for probably like 30 minutes. I think I had to hang 2 mirrors or something.
Yeah.
And, but I wanted them to come. Like the idea of buying it close to home, there's better properties with better numbers elsewhere. But I'm like, this way they don't complain about the drive. I'll get them involved. We were there for 5 minutes. My youngest daughter's already like, when are we leaving? I'm like, we're leaving. I go, just wait, like a few minutes, just chill. She's like, 1, 2, 3. And I'm like,
sounds like Sammy.
Yeah. And I'm like, do not do that. Okay. Like, I'm like, damn it. Don't you realize we're here for you? I didn't do that, but in my head, that's what I'm thinking. Right.
And I can only imagine it hits up against your triggers because you were raised tearing the floors out of these homes, and you were raised reframing these homes, and that was what you guys did as a family.
100%. Yeah. If my dad caught me sitting around on the job site, which he did, I was feared for my life. As his eyes would change, I'm like, oh God. I swear I probably to be fair, I probably sat down for 10 minutes, but in my head, I was only sitting down for 25 seconds before he turned the corner and found me.
Yeah,
you know?
Right, of course.
So it's, I think they have to want it. But I do see a difference even in my kids now, that one really isn't interested in that stuff about money, and maybe she will be as she gets older, but my younger one is always asking, she's like, Dad, so why are people paying us to be there? Like, she's asking the questions like how it works, like she's trying to figure that stuff out, right? And who knows where it goes, but I think it has to, you don't appreciate stuff, or at least I don't appreciate stuff unless I have to earn it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just a knucklehead. I got to learn things the hard way.
Well, that which we attain too easily, we don't truly appreciate. And that's what we thought for our kids. So anyway, it was a big experiment, but now seeing how committed Alden is to this, we feel really good about it.
Yeah, and that's cool. Tell you, too, him speaking with, he had to shop his mortgage. And so speaking to different lenders, he realized, and this is interesting because we build to rent properties, and he's gone on the tours and he knows the education, and for the first time when he was speaking to one of these lenders, the lender asked him, well, what are your goals? And he said, well, and he shared that he wants to purchase his first, after this home, he wants a true investment property, a duplex is kind of what he's thinking. And the lender said to him, well, with a build to rent, your income that you're projected to receive goes in as income. So you literally, if the income coming in could pay for the mortgage, you don't have to qualify for anything. Basically is what they told him.
He was giving him advice for the future.
Right. You could word that better than I can, but essentially
you were pretty close.
Alden had an aha moment where he thought, hold on, I don't have to re-qualify for an entire, I don't have to make twice as much to have two homes. I just have to have tenants in place.
Yeah.
And what a light bulb moment at 21 years old to say, I can continue to add to a portfolio as long as I do my homework and know that I can put people in there to pay my bills.
Yeah.
What a freaking amazing thing to know at such a young age.
100%, because I don't mean to cut you off.
No, you're great. I mean, to find that out at 21.
Yeah, I just think it's my goal for my kids is I don't care if they ever buy investment properties ever. But what I want them to understand is just that, is that the way things work. And if you want to take a different path, this is a path you can take, and this is how these things work. This is how it,
That's great.
So because no one talks about that. Like I was never, my parents never spoke to me about it. I didn't understand that, either. So I had to figure that out. And I'm just like, I just want you to understand there's different avenues. You don't have to just go down this one path and ignore these things. And by the time you're 40 or 50, turn back and be like, oh, I wonder if I should have done something there. And if you choose not to do it, great. It's not for you. Don't do it. That's fine with me. But I just want them to understand it. And
then you're taking the right approach. And where I've seen the biggest disaster, because we've hosted lots of family retreats. It's all entrepreneur families. Some very successful people come. I mean, you probably agree, sweetheart. And I mean, Jamie, not you. The kiss of death, Nick, is trying to force a child into a business you've built without asking them what they want to do. I mean, it's crazy.
You guys have seen that during your retreats. You've seen people try to do that, I guess. Do they come to the realization sometimes?
I like to see it. I think a lot of people see the light. Other people still, they have this old school entrepreneur mentality. Like, no, I've built it. They need to take it over. This is like, it's a rite of passage that the kid has to do.
It's like, I was pissed and life sucked, so it should for him too.
Yeah, it's sad. But kudos to you guys.
That's one approach.
I mean,
no, but think about it. If you continued to carry the same way that your father carried, it would be the same thing. And maybe there's a part of your dad that thinks, because he's old school, he might be like, well, gosh, that came so easy for you. But you're like, it's not easy, it's different.
Yeah.
And the programming starts that young. Like right now with your daughters, I'm talking years ago, you could have been like, get ready to take over Rockstar. This is what, and they'd be like, what? What do you, and
they would hate it and they would resent you.
Anyway, the fact is, good for you guys. You're built and say, this is what I do. if you're curious, let me know, but let's see what you want to do.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the best. At least that's what seems to
It's worked
for us. and
Well,
other
Tom's
families.
son, who you guys know, he's working here now.
But he's so enthusiastic.
But
you
it
can tell.
was him.
Yeah.
It was him.
You
You
can
know,
tell.
like, and he wasn't given a place here. And I've told him this. He knows. He wasn't given a place here because he's Tom's son. He was given a place here because when he came on his first internship or whatever, you know, as a summer job, he was contributing, and he was contributing ideas, and he was doing things, and he earned it. So for the next year, when he came to me, he spoke to Tom, I'm sure, as well, but he came to me separately and said, "Hey, I'd like to be able to come back. Is there an opportunity for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, based on how you performed last year, yeah, not because he's Tom's son, it's
Right.
because of what he's contributing."
No,
So-
you could see with his skills, like when he came down and was putting together the videos, just of all some of our stuff together. I said, "There's obviously no nepotism, and we want to steal them from you guys."
He's genuine. He's a contributor. He's very much a
100%.
contributor.
And he comes with ideas and things. It's great.
But his enthusiasm and his contribution wouldn't be there if it was like, "This is what you're doing when you get out of college. You're coming for right." You're
You
like,
can't force people into things. I think all of us are the same way.
Yeah.
You always want to, you know, that you have to. We can laugh about this with my wife later, because I say sometimes I just have to let things sit with you for a while, and eventually it has to become your idea, and then it's a good idea of suddenly, even if we spoke about it 2 months ago and I brought it up,
"Oh
right?
my gosh, you're getting me in trouble." So I'll say something 2 months later, like I'll say, "You know, I'm thinking," and it'll be like one of my guy friends, like one of in our business mastermind had said that, and Jamie would have said it like 4 months before him. And she'll go, "Oh, do I need to start saying it in a guy's voice? Is that what you mean?"
Oh, that's a good line, though. That's a great line.
I'll say, "Oh, yeah, that is a really great idea."
Yeah, so I get it the opposite way.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure I do too. I just try to ignore the times that happens. I remember the times that it happens in my benefit. You know, I try to ignore the other ones. I have this thing. It's called selective memory. It's a wonderful.
It works.
It's great.
I know what you're talking about sometimes.
So, hey, those entrepreneur retreats you guys do, because, you know, with the 18 summers and stuff, are you, you know, how, like, what the heck? Most people to try to do that. You've gone from this real estate investor, and I know you've shared the story even on the podcast before about how you transitioned to that, but what was that like? Like, where did that come from? Whose idea was it? Not just the 18 summers thing, but whose idea was it to be like, we should get a group of entrepreneurs together and do this thing in person where we all talk about the challenges of having children and raising a family when you're an entrepreneur as well, when you feel pulled in a lot of different ways, and everything else you guys handle.
What's really neat, Nick, is the night that I met Jim, and literally we spoke maybe for 3 minutes, and it was quite a night because it was my birthday. I was there with my mom, my aunt, my uncle. Like,
I met her whole family
he
the
met
first night.
every
Talk
living
about
member of the family.
And they're all like, what?
In
What a
3
loser.
minutes. It was like,
but a handsome one.
Yeah.
it was like the fastest 3 minutes. But in addition to meeting all of my family on my birthday, when he told me what he did, he explained to me that he held retreats for entrepreneur families that were experiential. Sorry, I just got
education.
tripped up on my words. It's experiential education.
You were doing that before you guys met? Sorry, I was.
Yeah, we were doing some prototypes of it. Yeah.
So you want to talk about when you're given something that doesn't even make sense to you, when you're like, I'm a single guy, I don't have a family, but I'm watching what's going on around me, and I have this thing that needs to be brought into the world. And what's interesting is you had never had a retreat yet.
We had little prototype things.
With friends.
Yeah.
Not
a full active one.
But
And then
he so much and with such confidence told me that this was what he did. I put him in my phone as such, because that's how I put people in my phone. It's like such and such, you know, Brody's mom, or such and such, you know. So
you need to remember who the heck this person is.
It was Jim, retreat guy. And so it was such an, and he had
And then when
never,
I told her I was a real estate investor, her friend was like, oh, one of those guys. I swear, that's a true story.
She goes, he's broke. Because this was, you know, right after the meltdown.
Yeah.
But so what's
that funny?
interesting is that Jim had never told someone that was where his heart was, or that was where he was going. And so
And family? Did you come from a big family?
No, I have one sibling from each of my parents, but there are huge age gaps.
Okay.
So I didn't, but I always longed for a big family.
Yeah, and she was great with working with kids, so.
So it was very
That was
interesting
awesome.
that Jim had something laid on his heart years before he was truly a beacon for that. And then that was what he was shaped and made to be and to do. So that doesn't really answer your question of when it started.
Well, no.
But it started in him before we ever met.
But then
I didn't know. I actually didn't know that. Yeah.
Well, but it really kicked into gear when Jamie and I got together, because she had this Waldorf and Montessori background. So, I can like run in a direction enthusiastically with no guardrails or structure. And that's kind of where our brains combined and said, hey, why don't we do this and put this into place? But where it really came from, and it just kind of struck me, was, back when I first met you, and even before, I got into real estate investing real young. When I was 18, I looked like I was 12. So, my 20s, I still looked pretty dang young. And so the interesting thing, when I was going back to these real estate events, anything from the bigger financial educators, and I was getting invited to staff there, it was really interesting, Nick, because I was that age between the people attending and their kids. I was like median between. Yeah. And I was getting up to talk, and I was giving just natural talks and my own struggles in school and just my journey. And these parents would come up to me, I wish my teenager was here to hear that. I wish my son or daughter had been here to hear that. And I heard it no less than 150 times. Not that they would say, yes, we were glad we heard that, but gosh, I wish my kids were. And I was like, gosh, there's just a big gap here in what people are really seeing value in learning when they're really trying to put their life together, where it's personal development, financial intelligence, real estate investing, and what kids are actually being taught. Why
do you think sometimes it takes, is it, from what you guys have seen, do you think sometimes people aren't speaking with their kids about things, and that's why they would like them to hear that talk? Or is it because sometimes that the kids just don't receive things the same way from their parents, but sometimes when it comes from a third party that's respected in some way, or they view in a certain manner for whatever reason, they just listen more?
I would say yes to both. I think it is both.
So it depends on the kid?
It really does. Well, I do think that every day we're introducing our children to different experiences, and they're watching us. May always watching. And so if their experience watching us is struggle or frustration or anger with something, we may be teaching our children inadvertently, money's bad. Why would you want to be wealthy? Wealthy people are miserable. Or, wealth comes with struggle. Or, you're teaching your children things. If you're not teaching them in your words and you're teaching them in intentional examples, you will always be teaching them in unintentional examples. And they're going to learn either way. So that's the first yes. The second yes would be, Jim's always been the fun uncle. Even to our boys, you're the fun uncle. You got big muscles. You have a funny accent. When Leland was on tour, he couldn't stay away from you because you guys just talked the entire time.
Well, I wanted to talk about working out with him too. So yeah, it worked out perfectly. I'm like, I've seen these properties before. Hey, what's going on at the gym?
And so to him, anything that you say is cooler, is more fun. You have a different layer to you, and so he does listen to it, but he maybe hearing it first from his father and then hearing it from you, the different layers and the different angles and perspectives.
Different hierarchy.
Gives
right?
them
it's a way better. Yeah. You have a straighter line.
And you have no dog in the fight. So when you're telling it to him, he's not wondering, what's your angle? What's your perspective? Why do you want me to do that?
Or there's nothing that we battled over last night, or that there's something that happened with Mark somewhere, or some other circumstances. It's much more simplistic.
You're not holding them to curfew.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no pent up emotion from something else either. So maybe it's more receptive that way.
Yeah, that was the whole idea of the retreats. It was really selfish. With the boys, I wanted them to get the lessons I didn't get, and I knew would have made a bigger difference and better difference.
And those lessons are three pillars that we created.
Personal development, financial intelligence, relationship skills. I felt like if I had been taught those at a young age, the trajectory, and if I hadn't learned those things after I got out of college and really yearned to learn at that point, then I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now. You know what I mean? We wouldn't be planning trips to meet up in Europe and my life would look totally different without those three skills.
Yeah. One of the things I've tried for a period of time to get through both my kids, but it's more applicable to my older daughter now. She's 14 now. And it's just the value of communication, which goes towards those as well.
Yeah.
And, because sometimes she'll hold things in. I'm like, hey, I try to teach her a shortcut in life is being able to communicate with people, and it's asking for help when you need help. And it's not, to me, it's it's not necessarily a sign of strength to go be able to handle everything yourself. I think a sign of strength is when you're able to be mature enough to know that you maybe don't know that, and you need to go find a source of assistance to be able to help you with that. I tell her, like, with people in our company, like, we look for people like that, because that's like they can get further, and you help yourself and you can help other people that way.
Yeah.
So I've said it maybe 100 times. So she's probably heard it twice.
Well, and she probably likes Tom better, so maybe Tom can say it in a gentle, fun uncle way. And
she does. My youngest daughter, I think, likes Tom better because she hears him swear all the time. She's like, oh, because if I swear, I'm like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Or I'm on the phone, she might hear me say, swear word. I'm like, oh, sorry. She's like, Dad, I hear Uncle Tom say that. Oh, he drove me home the other day. He must have said that word 10 times. So, and I'm like, you were in the car for 5 minutes. I go, what's going on here? So,
what did Sammy say to our friend Ben Burmaster? He said, "Oh, my dad speaks Irish a lot." And
he goes,
and Ben's
really?
like, I'm in Ireland. I didn't know that was specifically Irish.
The F word.
Yeah. It happens. Other finer moments.
It's a sign of passion.
Yeah.
But I think too, something that you referenced, that asking others for help or reaching out for things. One. I think that's another thing that your children are always watching and learning. And so I think, we have Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas does so many wonderful things in our life for us. And our children know there are things that Mom can't do, Dad can't do, but we ask Mr. Thomas to help us. And
he's like our personal GC,
and
our personal
general
contractor.
Valuable. And we treat him well. And we love him. And we protect him. And we pay him well. All of the layers of, I think it's important for our children to see who we're leaning on and how we treat them and how they treat us back.
For sure,
so I think when we think about this fun uncle, sometimes that network extends just a bit into people who we work with. As you said, having Aiden here, and having your staff, like, everybody has a bit of valuable input that your children are always watching and learning. How does my dad talk to them? What are they helping my dad with? Yeah. And I think that the children see that and they learn, okay, I don't have to know how to change the breakers and the tire and mow the lawn and be the GC on the new build. I just have to do the thing that is my skill.
Yeah. Well, and you've seen our education matrix we designed years ago.
Yeah.
When the boys turn. So one of the things in relationship skills is offering help, asking for help.
Mentor.
Like, how do we teach those things? Because the thing that I've learned with entrepreneurs, my buddy's having a down time, let me go to try to help him. And then you go into a bad time and you've put together this Superman complex and said, I can't talk to my mastermind group or my business friends that I'm struggling. And it sets a really bad example for your kids. Because if you're only willing to offer help and never comfortable to receive help or ask for help, it sets a bad example. And I used to be horrible at that. It's funny when you said that, like, we're a couple of things I was like, wow, I'm always offering help and I never asked for help. Yeah. And that was a real weakness I had.
It's a male stereotype, isn't it? Like, the stubbornness to not ask for directions is like some stereotype for some reason that comes to mind.
That's one of them.
What I mean?
To ask for help is a weakness instead of a strength.
Well, I think that's how society has programmed men, right? You have to be the strong, you have to, in certain layers of that. I'm the same way too. I was raised by a single mom. And so my similar strength and weakness is that I can do it. I got it. I'm fine. I'm strong. I figured it out. And that's really not a strength. It is a strength to ask others for help.
It's a tough one because it's a fine line, because then there's some people that will never go and do anything themselves. They're always going to ask someone else, right? So which is
how I ended up doing the other end of the spectrum.
There's a median.
I'm like, I won't be that person.
Yeah. So that's where the balance is, because then you have kids that are like, well, they're just asking for help all the time. It's like, well, go do it. Go try it yourself first, right? So then there's this balance, like everything.
Yeah, always and never are a bad place to be. They always ask for help on every little thing.
Yeah,
they never ask for help on anything. Neither one will get you where you want to go. You got to kind of find a happy medium.
I want to ask you guys one other thing around this. This is super interesting because of the experiences you guys have. So I appreciate you sharing this. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, were all your kids? Did you guys homeschool all your kids?
We did a blend.
Okay.
We did a blend of homeschooling, alternative education like Waldorf and Montessori, and then road schooling, where we were just off traveling somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'd spend 6 weeks at a time just exploring. We wouldn't have necessarily an agenda. We would just set out on the road, and we would find ourselves. One time we were, from Florida to Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, the Cabot Trail. Another time we ended up in Montana, and did that direction.
Yeah.
And so we just,
The lower states.
yeah.
So then where does the personal development lessons that you guys wanted or felt were valuable for the kids, was it books? Like, were they reading books that you suggested, or was part of like whatever, maybe the curriculum's probably not the right term to use, but
that's a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, where the personal development stuff, how did you instill that in the children? Because that's a tough one.
So I think there's a couple of different things. I mean, hosting our own family retreats and then attending them, we'd get invited to speak at other people's. We'd always bring our kids. And so other people are setting up, they're always doing activities, group activities with lessons in personal development or financial intelligence. And we love that. And so we didn't always have to foster it. Sometimes we did, or someone else did. Another important thing that we did was we played games that had like values based around personal development. Like Stephen Covey has a kids game.
Oh, does he?
Seven
Really?
Habits of Happy Kids. That was awesome. We're still playing it with the younger ones. That's a great one to teach the 7 habits in a fun, goofy way.
It's for younger children. Also, they have a book series, 7 Habits for Happy Children. And every quarter we would read a different book with the big boys.
The older
so we have
boys.
big gaps. We have the 2 olders, and then we have the 3 youngers. And so the 2 bigs are both graduated, both have their own career paths set and such. But things that we did with them was once a quarter we would have a different book, a book such as The Alchemist. And we would, every week we would have,
Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich, Richest Man in Babylon. And so we would have these books that we would read, and we would kind of do a weekly book club. So Jim and I and the big guys would have a once a week date. We'd go to dinner and we would discuss the book. And any of their friends that wanted to do weekly dinners with us, they also had to be reading the book.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, so it was like a little book club. And this is an important thing. Again, I had really good friends and mentors that helped guide us in our family life. But then you 2.0 it. Like some of my mentors said, give your kid a great book like Richest Man in Babylon and pay them $100 to read it and write a report on it. That's better than nothing. But what I found is once you pay them to do it and just say, get through this book and write a 1-page report, you go back to that old school brain, like what's going to be on the test? Let me just put some words.
Got to get this over with.
Just get it done with. Yeah. So what we decided to do is our approach with the boys, me and Jamie and some of their friends was we call it a deep dive, slow digest, right? So we're not doing a stack of books. We're picking one book for the next 90 days. And we're going to go through it slowly. And every Thursday we're going to dinner. And we're just going to read the next 10 to 15 pages. We're going to discuss it. We're going to go through it. We're going to give examples
that it brings up in their life.
Yeah.
So there may be something that reminds them of some interaction they had in school or with a girlfriend or with a friend, and it brought all sorts of stuff to the surface. Like we may have been speaking on,
like Rich Dad Poor Dad. Did you do house deals like this? You really bought a house for this and put this into it? And yeah, let me give you a real example. And so when it's more of a communication and discussion group. You'd send them off on their own to read the book. It's a different effect.
That's a really interesting approach, especially to go through it so slowly like that, and the discipline it takes too to stick with it every week and to go for the dinner every week instead of being like, oh well, sorry, we can't this week because of this, or I'm tired. There is a discipline component from the parents.
Sure.
But that then instills just a whole other set of habits when you stick with that, because it's not even the lessons in sticking with that are taught without actually having to teach anything.
Yeah.
Because they see the commitment, the discipline, the consistency, all those things.
Yeah.
Right.
And the good thing is if you're only reading one book a quarter, life gets busy. There's an extra soccer practice. There's this. Maybe you miss a week, but then you can just pick back up and you're saying, okay, we finished just this one and we know it really well. Because, sometimes you can read 5 books and you've rushed through them and you're like, wait, what did I learn? With these ones, it's probably the 4th time I had read Richest Man in Babylon. I got more out of it that first time that me, Jamie, and the boys read it together.
Sure, because you're going slower and you can digest it and you have to think about it a different way, right?
And we're having to be prepared to share real examples to help our kids understand it more. So it was an incredible hack for us to up our learning.
And even if we knew that, even if we had no other time, like say it was an insane week, maybe Jim was traveling or I had younger children that were sick or something, the big boys knew that we had that time together held for them. And I just think that the
That's
intentionality of that rhythm and that, as you said, discipline, it didn't feel like discipline. I mean, we really looked forward to it the same way that I look forward to date night with Jim every week. It was really a time in which I knew I could, if we weren't connecting on anything else, because sometimes that's how adolescents are, right? You don't connect on anything. But that was the moment in which we knew that we had a common ground and a common vocabulary. So same thing with some of the fun games that we would play. Throughout the week, there were other things that we could communicate on, or we would find other examples in our life that were happening, and we now had a common vocabulary or a common perspective on something. And as we did more books or played more games, that continued to build.
Yeah. The diverse set of what you guys do is so cool. I really always enjoy talking to you guys. So I appreciate it. I'm glad you're up here. We're having a discussion around this tomorrow, which is, I think, is going to, just based on this, going to be super interesting for people because we get asked about this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So where does people, is it the book? What do people reach out to you guys? Is it the book? Because I'm just looking at the time and I'm realizing that my wife's probably waiting for us already. And I'm going to be in a little bit of trouble. So, but where is it? The books? What are the best place to learn more about? Is it?
They want to learn more about new construction real estate. Just go to southernimpressionhomes.com.
Okay.
And then if they're
our retreats and our family content,
just go to
would be 18summers.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So is it? Sorry, I should know this. Is Southern Impression or is it SI Homes?
southernimpressionhomes.com.
Oh, there's no SI Homes?
Well, SI Homes is Southern Impression.
No, I know that. I thought the URL was SI Homes.
No, it's Southern Impression.
Okay.
I think Jim's email is at SI Homes.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So scratch SI Homes. Southern Impression Homes.
Homes.com.
or 18summers.com.
You want to talk about family. And again, most of our real estate business, as you know, our last book was half about real estate and new construction, real estate investing, and family. So
real
I guess
estate is how
we
we are able to fund doing some of these grand adventures with
Yeah,
the
it can be over the long run. It can
great
be. I think we can safely say it's changed all our lives.
easily.
Right. So
Easily.
cool. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Tom. I'm Nick. Holy cow.
Oh, you're in trouble.
I'll edit that out.
Better than sweetheart.